one of the reasons that Mossad is so capable is because they're always innovating new kind of cutting edge, high risk operations, and they're planning them and they're wargaming them and they're setting them in motion as precautions just in case they choose to exercise it in the future. Right. So it's not like they're sitting around a table and then they come up with this idea and then 2 days later it's executed. Right. They thought about this years ago. They thought about this 3, 5, 12 years ago, and back then Netanyahu and the Security Council were like, this is not the right time. This is not the right time. But after dropping the ball on October 7th, this is a time when they need to win some WASTA back. So they're like, let's launch our big showy stuff, just like our Tomahawk missiles from the United States. Let's blow up pagers just to show the world that we can. Yeah, there's collateral damage. No one's going to focus on that. Yeah, we're also blowing up kids in some places. No one's going to focus on that. And now let's launch drones from inside Iran. We don't have to, but let's do it anyways, just to show that we can. Because Netanyahu wants to put fear. He wants to use that psychological warfare to keep Hezbollah and keep Hamas from counterattacking when they're focused on Iran.
Which is just as important part of warfare as the actual warfare. There was this conversation, I don't know if it was real or not, on Twitter. Of course, we're now seeing this on our social media, of a Mossad guy calling up one of the Iranian generals saying, you got 12 hours to publicly come out with a video and say, I'm giving up, I'm walking out. He's like, we already killed this guy, this guy, this guy, and you're next, and you're going to take your wife and your kid and these things with you. And the guy's like listening, and he's asking some questions, and he's like, how do you want me to send it to you? He's like, on Telegram. He's like, well, do you want my number? He's like, I have your number. And so it's just this scare tactic they probably used on all of them. But when you're there, 12 days in and all of these things are happening, and maybe some of that stuff works. And alongside with all of the psyops, it works even on people that are used to psyops.
So think about the fact that, the cartels in Mexico have had a long history of success by convincing parents that their children are in cartel custody when they're not, right? They just call up a parent and they say, hey, we have your child. We have them tied up. We know what hotel they're staying in, and we'll kill them in 12 hours if you don't give us $30,000, right? And then they're on the phone with the child on the other side, and they're like, hey, we're this high-end prostitute, and we're going to come visit you. All you need to do is take a picture of yourself in your hotel room in your underwear. And then they send the picture of the person in their underwear to the parents. They say, see, we've already stripped them down. And they can extrapolate money from the fear tactic of literally just playing emotions off of each other. That's messaging and narrative again, right? So, of course, Mossad, a trained organization, can do it even better than the cartels.
Are you surprised how quickly this happened since October 7th? I mean, Hamas, Hezbollah, followed Syria, inside Iran, on the boots on the ground, infiltrating. I mean, wow, If you go all the way back to 2022, really, with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, you can see the tempo of war changing. It used to be that these things took months or years. It used to be that even before that, there were these limited conflicts, right? And limited conflicts would kind of burn out because nobody would support them. Well, now what's happening is these limited conflicts are getting the world's support, financial, weapons, intel, strategy, and they're burning longer. And then as they burn longer, more people get involved. And then there's more politics that come into play as well. People need victories. People want to capitalize on distraction. That's a lot of what we're seeing right now. So the tempo is absolutely speeding up. I say that because I am surprised in a way that we're seeing conflict increase at a rapid pace, even while everybody says they want peace. But I'm not surprised that conflict is escalating in the way that it is, because human nature is such that, like you said, don't let a good crisis go to waste. So everybody's looking at every new crisis and saying, can I use this? How can I use this? Oh, man, what a crazy world to be a part of. And also you're seeing the narratives of like the Hezbollah strength or the Syrian regime or the Iranian regime. Also, the narrative gets decimated too,
Yeah.
And then it's much easier to just continue to plow through.
Yeah, you brought up Syria a few times now. What's impressive to me about Syria is Turkey going back on the world stage again, right? And yes, Israel had a role, but their role was very limited, and really it was serving Israeli interests in the Golan Heights. Like that was their primary focus.
Right.
The rest of Syria is a victory for Turkey, and a very pragmatic victory for Turkey, because Turkey needed a fucking trading partner that was the next neighbor over, and they lost that with the previous regime. So Turkey has been heavily engaged in this work across Syria. And the fact that the United States is even meeting with the current leader of Syria, who's a former extremist, right? These are all signs to show just how powerful Turkey is still as a world player, as a political and diplomatic world player, not just a strongman, even though obviously there's some very strongman tendencies in Turkey.
Yeah, you're right. It's a whole chessboard over there. And I heard, that was a Turkish victory as well. Look, I want to get into the book, but is there anything else in the world that maybe keeps you up at night or that you think about? I guess we're talking less about Russia, Ukraine now because of the Middle East. Is it, elections in Europe? Is it the economy? Is it tariffs? Is there anything else that you try to get people to pay attention to?
Every time I get an opportunity to tell people what I'm focused on, I tell people I'm focused on Europe. Because Europe is one of the few places in the world where you have a concentration of multiple independent countries that have to cooperate for their own economic and military welfare. And they're not. It's still undecided if they'll find a way to cooperate or not, or whether they're going to break into even further, subcompacted groups. But the idea of NATO is struggling, the UN is struggling, like international law and international justice, all of these things they're rocky right now. People are just selectively choosing to disregard, right? The International Criminal Court puts warrants on the arrest for both Putin and Netanyahu, and both Putin and Netanyahu still travel to UN countries and get passes, right? Yeah. So what does it all mean? Are we actually upholding the justice and the law and the promises that we make to each other, or are treaties just empty? And that's really what we're seeing across Europe. The United States has always been its own beast. And the United States 100% is falling victim to celebrity politics right now. It's been falling victim to celebrity politics since Barack Obama, right? Barack Obama was elected because of popularity, because of celebrity, right? And then Trump came in because of celebrity. And then Biden came in off of Obama's celebrity. And now Trump's back in again. I don't see celebrity politics changing in the U.S. anytime soon. You were just talking about Marco Rubio, right? That's all celebrity. Yeah. That's all. He's just trying to gain more. Yeah. So our age of the professional politician has passed, and our age of the statesman has long passed. So who the fuck knows what's coming up next for the United States? But Europe is still at a place where it gets to decide. It's still dissolving parliaments and revoting politics and trying to bring prime ministers in that are proper and appropriate. But is it going to fall victim to celebrity politics too? Because right now, a lot of politicians in Europe are essentially choosing pro-Trump or anti-Trump as their platform. Yeah. Well, if all you're going to do is make your country pro or counter America's populist ideas, that's not independence at all. So I'm keeping an eye on Europe because Europe is really going to set the temperature for whether democracy has a place in the future or whether it really is a thing of the past.
Do you think this inherent socialism that Europe is founded on, that actually a lot of people don't know until you visit here and you start seeing it everywhere? And look, the UK is somewhere in between, the US and here, but the UK definitely has these socialist tendencies just from the attitudes of people. Yeah. But you go into Europe and it really is this old socialist state. And I just see that, and I see these kind of broken, somewhat bankrupt, classical democracies that hold their head up high with this pride, but when you dig down, it's just a mess underneath it, from the health services to the public transport to the everything. Does it have a chance of turning that around?
It's a good question. And when you walk through certain streets in Portugal and Italy and Spain, you definitely feel like there's no hope here, right? When you can literally see the lack of ambition in people's faces. You can see the hopelessness in their face because they know I was born and I'm going to die and I'm going to work in between, and that's all there is to it. And I'm going to pay 45% taxes along the way. Like, that's just life, right? You can see by the lack of billionaires, you can see by the lack of innovation, you can see by all of these things that socialism has taken root in many, many cultural elements across the democracies of Europe. It can always change. It can always change because it's really just a matter of policy and a matter of meritocracy for the few that make a substantial impact. But when you can't inspire a child to innovate because you tell them from the beginning, you're a cog in a wheel, and the best you can be for your country is to be that cog in the wheel. It's very hard to innovate and excite those people. But there's always outliers. Right. So it's going to take an outlier to allow the other outliers to blossom. But there's still more hope there, I would say, for them to turn around their democracies than the direction the United States is going right now with their heavy bipolar populist attitudes. I mean, we're going to have to essentially forget about 30 years of history in the United States to get back to a proper democracy.
It's wild times. It's interesting, just to finish this off, I go from here and to Dubai. And Dubai is a wild place because it attracts people who are there to do something.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, you can't even come there unless you're going to do something.
Right.
And so the energy is just completely different. And I always describe this to people when I'm in London, central London. And again, look, London isn't France. It's not the US, but it's more capitalistic than Europe. You look around and 2/3 of the people here are, like you said, just blank-faced. They're phoning in. They're walking around. They're collecting a check in one way or the other from a government or from a job they don't really care about. They're not even really engaged. And you just see this kind of a zombie factor. Whereas when I go to Dubai, everyone is there is hustling and everyone there has the energy and everybody wants to change something. And
unless
if you are
Emirati.
Yeah, unless you're Emirati, although the highest levels of Emirati, they got a fire under their butts too. But yeah, maybe that's true. Maybe that could be changing, but maybe. And it's refreshing to be around if you're one of those people and you're around those people like, wow, these things are happening. These people are going. And I remember I got back to London recently and I was like, wow, there's an old person. There's no old people in Dubai, at least tourists. There's just no old people. There's no handicapped people. I mean, there's some, but not really. There's nobody that moves slow there. And the Sheikh Maktoum has an expression. He says, when you wake up in the morning, whether you're a lion or whether you're a gazelle, you run. And so everybody wakes up and runs. And it's a great vibe to be around, and they innovate like crazy and they built something amazing. But that's not here, and it's maybe never going to be here.
It is. It's interesting because the idea that individuals can succeed independently in many ways is a stark contrast to democracy. So how do we have to choose which side we want to support. Do you want to support the individual who could independently become wealthy and create a company and create jobs and change the future? Because if you support that person, then you don't really want equality for everyone. You don't really want equal opportunity. You don't really want to take this person's resources and feed it across the group, because all you're doing is slowing this person down. And if you do want to do all of this, then you're not going to be breeding people like this. And the world is finally waking up to the fact that we have to choose. I think 20 years ago, we thought we could have both because there was a lack of insight into the other's plight. But now that we have so much information, now that you can literally watch a far left and a far right podcast back to back in 2 45-minute segments on YouTube, you can hear what they both truly believe in, and you can see that there's not a lot of middle ground there. You look at the United States, you got LA is a visionary capital, New York is a visionary capital, and everything in between is just trying to feed off of their success. Well, that's democracy, but that also prevents breakout success, and breakout success is what you need if you're going to be ready for the future.
And those two groups are going to get more polarized, you believe, over the next 10, 20 years?
Oh, for sure. Because it's going to continue to be this doubling down on our way is the right way and you're evil. And the opposite side saying the same argument. And that's not an argument. That's just messaging.
Is that why you're taking the family and leaving?
That is why we have plans to leave the United States, because it's in the United States, being an American is difficult. But being an American outside of the United States still comes with unique opportunities. So if I'm, as a parent, as a business owner and as a parent, when I think about the impact that I want to make in the world, I want to shape for my children, because I can't shape the world, but I can shape the world for my kids. I can give them a better life, better opportunities, and better worldview outside of the United States than I could ever give them inside of the United States.
Is that the main driver? You don't like the narratives they're getting at school, from friends, from the media? You don't like the feeling because, you can out-parent that, you and your wife, and have this incredible podcast and this book and all these other things. I mean, it's interesting that you would just say, you know what, I can't do it here.
So one of the big things that CIA teaches all of its officers is that you can't will success. You can't will a change. You have to change the environment. If you're in an environment that believes the world is flat, no matter what you believe, the environment will eventually wear you down, because the environment never gets tired. The environment never takes a break. The environment never needs more energy, right? So if you live in a dark place and it's dark all the time, you're going to get depressed. If you live in a sunny place and it's sunny all the time, you're going to get sunburned, right? You have to change the environment if you plan on changing what happens psychologically inside. So it's not that I want to leave the United States because I'm afraid of my kids' narrative, right? I can change their school. I can change their teacher. I can change the city that we live in. We've done all of those things. What I need to do is I'm trying to create global citizens, not blind, hard-headed Americans with their blind, hard-headed opinions. I can try to parent intelligence into my kids, but again, their exposure to me is counted in, a few hours. Their exposure to their environment is counted 24 hours a day, every day, right? If I pull them out and I put them in a different environment, now they adopt what's in that new environment. If I pull them again and move them again, now they get a different environment. Imagine being a child that spends 2 years in 5 different countries. How broad are you in 10 years? You start to develop your own opinions and your own perspective, and that's really what I want to give them. If I keep them in the United States, I'm gonna precondition them to think like whatever the predominant political party is in whatever city or state we live in. And I can't even give them diversity there because I can move them California to Florida to Texas to New York. I can do that, but then they're just going to get 2 extreme political opinions instead of any kind of well-rounded worldly view.
So fresh on. Freedom.